Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We are now live, and I am joined today by, I think I've mentioned this in some of our posts, this is our first truly international panel that we've had for one of these webinars. So I am joined by Carol, Tiffany, and Rachel. I'm going to let them introduce themselves to you. So Carol, do you want to go first? Tell everybody who, where, what you are.
Who, where, what I am. Carol Fraser. Carol Fraser, CEO of C4 Talent, an HR coaching and consulting firm. I am in New York. Go for it, Tiff.
Wonderful. Thank you. I'm Tiffany Castano, and I'm CEO and founder of Zephyr, which is an HR, culture, and DEIB firm. I am based in Madison, Wisconsin, and excited to be here today.
Thank you for joining. Rachel.
Hey, everybody. I am Rachel Wilson-Rugelshan. I am founder and CEO of Level Up HR. I am a pseudo-Scandinavian. I'm based in Oslo in Norway. I'm British. And my business is a HR consulting company working with leadership, high performance teams, and organizational design. So I'm a sort of HR strategist. And it's great to be here. It's already dark, and it was almost 0 degrees when I got up this morning. So I love feeling connected to warmer parts of the world as well through this. It's really nice to be here.
Oh, wow. 0, that's the gosh. Yeah, no, it was 21 here this morning, which was quite nice. Well, thank you, ladies. Seriously, thank you for joining me. This, as we've managed to do for all of these webinars so far, this I feel is a really important topic. It's something that I see HR professionals often struggling with. It's something that I struggled with in my HR career, and good Lord, did I get it wrong a few times. You know, there's just this kind of hoping and praying that people would buy into what I wanted to do, that people understood what I was trying to achieve, but never really having the words to talk about it effectively. So that's our theme today. It's around articulating the value of HR. And so I want to kick off. Rachel, I'm going to come to you first. How do you think, let's get straight into like definitions here. So how would you define the role of HR in a way that when you're talking to business leaders who just see it as a cost center or an admin function? Because I think that's something that we come across quite often. So yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
I've always, whether I've articulated it this clearly through 20 years of HR, I don't know, but I have certainly always thought of it as creating business results, and hopefully sustainable business results that are good for the society, for the world, and also stand the test of time. But here comes the main thing for me, creating those business results, but through people that thrive. And what I mean by people, I think we all mean by people, is leaders, employees, and teams. So I don't know whether I've always articulated that clearly, but it's about creating results. It's about translating the business strategy into results through people. And I think there's a word like enable. I think enabling for me is how I've always, at least when I was in corporate HR, so I've spent 20 years in corporate HR, mainly in investment banking, finance, and tech. And I think, as you say, there's almost this like defending the role, the value, because we hear this, you're not revenue generating. So I've had a lot of practice at persuading, negotiating, making people see that while we're not directly revenue generating, we create results and we create them through people.
They like that. Yeah, it's that. Yes, it's the revenue generation piece. Tiffany and Carol, what are your thoughts on that in terms of, what's the word I'm looking for? Reducing that idea that it's a cost center or an admin function.
I think one of the things that CEOs, especially if you're working with small and medium-sized businesses, when you get into a large business, many of them see the value of HR, and they're able to themselves to articulate it to the board. And a lot of times we're inside that board meeting. Even when we have the HR operations component within our purviews. Those are the closest thing to the employee's satisfaction. If you don't pay them right, if you don't give them benefits, if you don't communicate with them, if you don't enable them with tools to do their jobs, or at least a way to show them how they can do their job better, if you don't train them how to do their job better, all of that is exactly what Rachel was talking about the business results. But too often they are seen as administrative. But if you take all of that away, you do not have people focused on the business. You have people who are like, my check was wrong. I'm having problems with my benefits. All of that pulls the attention away from the business results. If you would love if somebody were to take care of their payroll problem or benefits problem after hours, but we all know anything's only open 9 to 5, and that's when you have to go take care of it. And that's during the time that you want them to focus on your business. So when I think about a way to define the role of HR, we all know that there's multiple buckets and multiple specialties, but each of those is directly focused on your business outcomes. Whether you directly see that or not, take us away, take the value that we bring away, you'll see your business outcomes change.
That's very
100%. I love what both of you have shared, because what a common theme has been enable, but not in the bad way, right? We know that there can be behaviors that are enabling that are not healthy or sustainable. And so I usually call that empowerment. To one of the things that our value and why it's so hidden is because you often don't know it, because it's that nagging feeling, that sneaking suspicion that's keeping you up at night, the things that you're thinking about. Did that person get paid? Oh no, can we trust our payroll company? You need us at the table to be able to help support that. And it's part of our job is to keep you out of the hot seat, but we have to be seen as a body, so to speak, to allow that to happen. So one of the greatest things about HR and our value is really the thought partnership, the consideration, the am I thinking about this right? And I think some people think, well, we don't want to tell HR because what if I'm doing it wrong? Or we don't want to illuminate something that could be going on. But that is part of our role, is to help you, if you allow us to help you. And the amount of people data that we have, as you both have described, is so important. And those are the things that should resonate with people versus worrying about, like, if we're a cost center, are we just admin? Our role really expands as the organization can help support that to happen.
Yeah. Thank you. Absolutely true. I think, well, sometimes for me, I mean, the next sort of thing I want to cover is around misconceptions or incorrect perceptions of HR, because they are many. And every so often on LinkedIn, I probably do this about every 3 to 6 months, I do a post that literally is what is not HR.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if I could do it every week. I get some of the highest levels of engagement on that particular question, because everyone's got a view on it and they're all different. So Carol, let me come to you. What do you think are some of the most common misconceptions that people have? Some of the ones that hinder HR in its ability to create value, and how can we address those as HR professionals?
This is funny because when I relaunched my website at the end of September, I have an assessment, an HR assessment that people can take for free. I purposefully put in everything that somebody has asked an HR person to do. And when it comes down to valuing the assessment itself, if you decided to click that it's HR's job to make copies, there are points taken off of the assessment.
I want to do
Christmas party in there too.
Right?
That's my pet one. That's my pet hate.
I mean, so the first misconception is we're administrative, right? So we aren't. We are. I appreciate the departments of ones. I appreciate the small companies who have asked that individual to wear the multiple hats and to be the unicorn and to do everything from ordering the food for the break room, all the way to please help me design my succession planning. That is a superhuman right there, but we are not the administrative. So HR is not just administration. We are also not the rule enforcer. We are there to support you to understand why there are parameters. I hate rules. Why there are parameters and how you work within those parameters. And we will support you as a leader in helping to articulate that information. But dear God, please quit touching me on the shoulder going, I need you to write somebody up. No, I don't write anybody up. You write people up. The one thing that I really hate, okay, that's a harsh word. Sorry. HR is only payroll and recruiting. You Google it, you Wikipedia it. That's what you get. We are just recruiting and we do payroll. And that is that much of us, right? And so those two ones are like the biggest craw that I have. I think the other one that is, people do not expect us to know this, so they sometimes don't invite us, but that HR doesn't understand business. In today's HR professional, and if you've gone through, albeit somebody, we can all argue around the value of the certifications, but if you've gone through any of those certification programs, there is the focus that we are part of a business and you need business acumen. Now, the levels at which an HR person has that business acumen is going to vary based on their tenure, based on their exposure. But we are trained to understand how the people impact your business. So right there should be the entree in that HR does understand business. But too often they think that we don't, because let's go back to the two ones. All I do is hire and fire. All I do is payroll. And I do all the administrative tasks. But there's so many more. But I'll let you guys chime in on what you think some of the misconceptions are.
Yeah, Tiffany, do you want to give us your four penneth?
Well, Carol just said a lot of them, but the one, and Kirsten, you talked about the posts. I tend to do those too, and there's no shortage of opinions when one way or the other or somewhere in the middle. But for me, one of those is the fact that we can't be trusted. It's always like, don't trust HR, don't give them your confidential stuff. That is one of the best. Well, I'm biased. I know this because I love HR. And so, but saying that we can't be trusted or we're going to break confidence. Now, it can happen, but that's a person who maybe shouldn't be doing that, because it is one of the best things about us, and being able to be a neutral party, giving those, that support. But when people say, oh, you can't trust them, well, then if nobody's coming to us, how do we help support? Then, that's when we get pushed back into, oh, well, they're just a cost center. And then why hire us if you're not going to give us a budget, if you're not going to respect us, or, we're placed in the wrong part in the organization, our job description becomes transactional. And so a lot of this happens at the organizational level where that happens. If we're not given the opportunity to be strategic, then we're, then we are seen as just payroll. Hey, that tap on the shoulder. I love how you describe that, Carol. Been there, to say, hey, I need to write somebody up. This person needs to be fired. And I also think that the people mistake where the lines of authority are. We're not out here telling people what to do. We're not in the business of telling you no. We want to empower you. But you also, as leaders or, teams have to do their part too. We have to do this together. And so I guess that's what I would add to that piece of the conversation. Yeah,
I agree with everything. Rachel, what would you add?
Yeah, you just got me thinking, actually, Tiffany, because HR, we're at this friction. We live in this friction point between the business and the employees, right? It's just a fact of our role. And I think, when you talk, Carol, you also got me thinking about, people's misconceptions or just lack of knowledge, experience of HR really. And when they talk about hiring and payroll, then I guess I suppose what I try to do in my recommendation is to meet people where they are. You know, if they're talking about hiring, they think you're just, you know, recruit, fill this role, somebody's left. Then how can we talk to them in a bit more of a holistic, strategic way and understand? And you talk about business acumen, and you hit the nail so on the head in terms of this business results. What are we trying to do here? Understand, are you trying to grow? Are you trying to go after a market opportunity? Have you seen a new jurisdiction in another country that you want to go after? How do we do that through our people? Do we need to restructure? Do we need to pivot? All of those things require some form of decent workforce plan. So it's not just hiring a few roles. It's a much bigger, much more thoughtful piece of strategic work. And that's where the real meat is, I think, and the real value is. But if you get that, you know, often reactive fire drill kind of request or just idea of HR, that's your opportunity. That's your in to build your business acumen, understand what are you trying to achieve, and then bring that immense value that you have that is not just filling that role or writing that job description, put it into that whole context. And I think that's where the fun is. And you also mentioned in your previous response about, I think I've probably been quite spoiled because I've been in companies throughout my corporate career where the value has been clear. In a way, it was free. It was articulated for me for free. I didn't really have to, you know, fight that hard for it to be understood, because you're right, you know, it was HR had that seat at the table, etc. It's been since working for myself these last couple of years that I've almost gone like, oh my God, we've got some work to do here. And as you kicked it off with, Kirsty, you know, that's the fact of the matter. You see it all over LinkedIn.
Yeah, you do. It's funny. Like, so I have a program called Spice, which is around helping HR professionals develop a more strategic mindset. And the P for Spice is perception. And so the one piece of advice that I would give to people in terms of overcoming those is find out what they are.
Yeah.
Because you can't change a perception if you don't know what it is.
No.
So like I always say, like, you just ask people what they think you're there to do, what they think are the most important elements of your role. And I get everyone to do this in the program when they do it. And the answers that come back, no one says strategic people problem solutions. Nobody says that. People are like, payroll, keeping us out of court, telling people off, for that sort of thing.
Telling people.
Yeah, but that's, and I'm looking at some of the comments down the side as well. And Lindsay's put, you know, HR should be having the difficult conversations, not managers. So yeah, enable managers to manage their own teams instead of doing it for them. We're shocking for doing it for them. We're really bad at that. Sometimes it's that whole anything for a quiet life. Yeah, I'll just do that for you. But the cleanup crew, the party planners, managing teams, you know, all of that sort of thing. There are multiple perceptions. You cannot change them until you know what they are. So that's the only thing I would say around that is, like, you've got to know what you're dealing with before you can even hope to change it.
And then when you do know what you're dealing with, take a reality check, because there are 26 different specific specialties within human resources. And then there's the cleaning crew and the party planning and the office supply. You need to, as HR people, learn the word no. Because you are one human being, and your magic is in only a few places. And the more you spread yourself to do it all, because you've got some past trauma of people pleasing, then you are going to continue to water down the practice as a whole, because you're only giving 10% to everything. Figure out what it is that you do amazingly, focus on those, and call in help for everything else. Because the misconceptions that we have on HR is that we can do it all. We can do soup to nuts. And boy, do we sometimes try to do it.
We do.
And then how many times did
we do it?
Yeah, the articles we've been reading all the time, HR burnout. HR is the burnout, right? So,
so true. Absolutely true. Okay. So Tiffany, let me come to you now, because I mean, this one particularly, I know you do a lot of work in the DEI space, so this one kind of would be, fits well. Where the initiatives that we're trying to get across the line in an organization are things like culture building, diversity, equity, inclusion, how do you communicate the value of that to leaders that are focused purely on the bottom line and revenue generation?
Yeah, I think, like we've been talking about, it is about people at the end of the day, and we come in all colors, shapes, sizes, beliefs, value systems, which hopefully are aligned with the business. But that is one thing, in the work that we do, we talk about the mission, vision, and value of the organization, and looking at, what is your actual strategic plan if you have one. But even if you don't have it formalized, one of the ways that I like to talk to leaders about this is to really help them understand the connection between their people, and not just looking for someone because of the type of background or the demographic that they fit. But if you're going to do outreach, you might as well do it right and be considerate and thoughtful, planful about how these initiatives come to be, what goals you're setting around them, and are they the right ones? Because I think, unfortunately, what we see is a lot of very performative measures. And I would say to people, you have to start somewhere, right? But I think that, that for your people can be the wrong thing. If we hire someone, I identify as a Black woman, if someone hires a Black woman onto the team, is the environment set up right for them? Is the culture what it claims to be? If we say that we have a value of letting people speak their minds, and then we dismiss people, we shut them down every single time, well, now I'm not bought into that. Now people are not going to stay, and we have an engagement issue. We have a retention issue. We have I have harmed people issue, which is very difficult. And so we need to also be able to, leaders do have this kind of consistent brand and value, but then also take care of folks and take action on things. If we ask you to do that survey and it's sent out, then we better take some action on it. And one of the things that kind of sticks in my craw, so to speak, is when asking HR to hold everything, we expect them to be the culture keepers, the party planners, all the things that culture is our responsibility, that DEIB is our responsibility. We cannot do all those things to the point that Carol just made and be successful and help the business meet its outcomes. And so I would say, giving those shared voices on things is also supportive, but we need leaders to lead, and to allow us to have some considerations in the process as well. So those are some of the things that stick top of my mind, and we need to do what we say we're going to do.
Yes.
I mean, there's so many studies now. There has been at least 5 years more, right? But I always think COVID, and I always think people finally had time to look at data, right? There's so much data out there that shows DEIB, culture, engagement impact the bottom line positively. Like, if you're a CFO or if you're a CEO and you want to know, how can I get more out of my people? You need to figure out how they want to be motivated, how they want to be communicated to, how you want to ensure that whatever it is your goals are aligning to whatever it is their goals are. And all of that is engagement and culture and DEIB and communications, and it does impact your bottom line. To think, I don't need to talk to my people. I don't need to ask them how they like to be motivated. I don't need to really think if they're enjoying their jobs. I don't need to really find out if they have any social hobbies. I don't need to know any of that. And my company's still going to be successful. I'd love to see the study on that one.
It's kind of disappointing, isn't it? In the sense that, like you say, there's been so much research, McKinsey research. I remember I started digging into it in about 2017 when they started publishing this, like the ROI. They started putting numbers to, in particular, women and ethnic minorities. So it's been very, very, clearly backed up, like you say, by research. And it's disappointing that you still have to put that on the table sometimes to convince that we do need to be inclusive and we do need to hire a diverse workforce. I suppose in many ways, Scandinavia and the Nordics are quite forward-leaning and quite advanced because we're a very egalitarian society. And so, we're often seen as trailblazers when it comes to DEI. There's plenty of work to do when you look at leadership, the makeup of leadership, and also board level leadership. But a fun thing, and I have many examples of this when I was working so my last corporate role was head of HR in a big tech company, head of HR for Norway in a big tech company. And they, one of the Scandinavian airlines had bought a project via this tech company, and they specifically asked that we send a diverse team to them. They were creating an app for the airline, and as they said, we want to reflect the market. The people that fly with us are everybody, right? The whole, that everyone. The app we want delivered and created by you needs to reflect that. Please send a diverse team. Such a great business case, right? We were already looking at what's the word I'm looking for? When you do applications for like RFPs, like big corporate RFPs, we were already, factoring in diverse and inclusion metrics into those. So it was so well timed. And it's what clients are asking for, right? So it's when you mention the research and the business cases, I think it's really worthwhile to lift and share these really good examples. And of course, they're getting results because they have their eye on it.
That's the thing, isn't it? I mean, sorry, Carol, go on.
I was going to say, I'm going to bring in something super duper uber technical. For those who are ever looking to figure out what the future is going to hold, if you're not an ISO follower, International Standards of Operations, or whatever the heck that is, ISO 30314, ISO 30314. Please go look into ISO 30314. It is the HR guidelines. And it will be best practices in the next 5 years, period, end of story. And you need to have how many leaders are going through coaching, how many people are signed coaches, what is your DEIB? And these will soon be the board metrics that they demand. So I have been studying this for the last year and a half. And every time, if you're doing an RFP and they want your sustainability plan, I guarantee you your questionnaire is ISO 30314.
I think we were implementing just that right there. This was some years ago now. So yeah, you've actually hit the nail on the head. That was what it was. And we now at national level in Norway, we have a requirement for 40% females on boards now. So the laws changed that we're the first country in the world to have that requirement. But of course, that takes time. And of course, there's a lot of progress, but you can bet your bottom dollar that people are looking for the loopholes. So, always work to do in this space.
So I've just found a link to that ISO 30314. I was just Googling while you were talking there. And
you did great.
It's a free sample, so it's
We've
very, very
time
long.
reading for the weekend now.
But for anybody who loves a bit of process geekery,
yes,
there's your link.
Uploaded straight to the app, Kirsty.
If anybody wants to take that, put it in ChatGPT and summarize it for us, that would be great.
And there was just recently changes.
Yeah.
It's such a good
it's really funny, everything that we were just talking about there. And it's something that came up in a call that I had earlier today. And I will never be able to wrap my head around how some managers fundamentally cannot see that their employees will perform better and be more productive if they enjoy what they do, and that it gets dismissed as fluffy. And all of the things that you've just been saying around, culture, DIB, inclusivity. But this was a really simple example that the person on the call gave me. Somebody in her company had got a pay rise in March and the manager hadn't told them yet. It's November. Now, reserve judgment on the fact that the money had been going into this person's account every month since March and they hadn't noticed. No judgment. But the person that I was talking to was the HR leader, and she's like, you've missed such a great opportunity for positive feedback, some encouragement and an opportunity to get that person feeling engaged because they didn't even know you'd given them a pay rise. And so, I mean, that is just so basic. It's so basic. But, I used to have that with traders as well. And I gave her this example when we were chatting at lunchtime. If anybody who's ever worked in financial services, Rachel, you will know this. Bonus day is a big deal. Those guys get bonuses that are multiples of their annual salary, not a percentage of their annual salary. I had a leader who for years, we used to say, if you've got anyone that's getting nothing, tell them before bonus day. Tell them like the day before. Don't leave it so that they're waiting. Tell them. And this guy just would not have those conversations. Okay. And what he also used to do is he just used to put the bonus letter envelopes on their keyboards when they'd gone out for lunch.
Oh, wow.
So firstly, wasted opportunity for the guy that you've given a ton of money to because he's had such a great year. And also really bad for the people that aren't getting what they expected to not even have a conversation about it.
Yeah.
But it's little things like that because communication, I think, is so key in engagement and well-being and that sense of satisfaction in people's jobs. It's like, just talk to me, tell me if I'm doing a good job or not. It blows my mind, but we see it constantly, absolutely constantly. Anyway.
I have a favorite exec at a previous company here in Norway, and he used the term signaling. I've signaled, I've signaled. And it just became this, okay, so I have this like idea of like this sort of inset with the antennae that's supposed to pick up like, oh, I'm being told an important message.
Signaled.
Yeah, I'm just like, do you know what? When you've said it once loud and clear, very directly and articulately, you need to say it 8 more times. And I suspect signaling is a quite advanced, sophisticated way for this person to pick up what you're saying. So how's it landing?
I mean, how many times?
Good answers.
Let me ask all three of you, how many times have you encountered that situation where this person's not performing, we want to get rid of them, we've reached the end of our tether? Have you told them?
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure they know.
I've lost
really?
count. Lots of people in the chat have mentioned we are not the fixers. You have to talk to your people. That's our job.
Those are the times I like to look back at the person and go, so do you think that you understand what your teenager is actually thinking? And the answer is like, no. And so then why do you think that the adult that works with you thinks that they know what you're thinking? If you can't read your own children, what makes you think that somebody else, you're going to be able to read somebody else? Like, take it back to the house. Half of the time you just mention the wife or the kids or the husband or the partner or the whatever. And they're like, oh. And I'm like, yeah, people who are like actually got your DNA still can't figure out what it is you want to say.
And we laugh. Of course, we laugh. And at the same time, we all know the damage that getting it so wrong can do, or not doing it at all. But of course, this is where we can really help. This is where we can really, again, articulate our value, show our value, be that coach, trusted advisor.
100%. Yeah,
and then,
totally
with the impact that a good result can then have on the employee and the wider team.
I remember once, sorry, I'm going off at a tangent now. I remember once a friend of mine was given a bonus, and the number isn't important, but the number was actually more than she was expecting to get. But what he said to her was, I would have given you more than this, but because of this, this, and this, I've only given you X. Whereas what he should have said was, thank you, you've had a fantastic year, here's X. And with that same number, she would have gone away feeling so positive. But as it was, she got more money than she was ever expecting, and she was devastated.
Oh, gosh.
I mean, it's like, it just shows you the power of messaging and getting that right. Because the number doesn't need to change, but I always used to say to people, I can sell a shit bonus to anyone because it's how you use my language. It's how you communicate it to people. Yep. If you haven't got the money to play with so that you're not able to give a good bonus, you can still give a really positive message with it.
Yeah. That is significantly low EQ right there. As I was pointing to my book, I'm like, Do you have any understanding of the self-awareness and your own self-awareness? And yeah,
is it Goldman, the EQ book? Is it?
There's Travis Bradberry, and then Travis Bradberry and Jean Graves. So this is the new one that came out, which is the one. Oh no, there's one for teams that just recently came out. That's amazing. Okay. Yeah.
Oh,
interesting.
Good tip. Good tip. I am an EQ tester. I'm not a coach.
Yes. I'm a
team coach and EQ tester.
I'm already thinking a future webinar topic needs to be EQ.
Oh, I could talk about
my God.
This is one of my
because I'll talk about till I'm blue in the face too.
Fabulous.
I could tell that you're all really excited about it because you're all talking at once, and so it will just be a nightmare for anyone. Everybody's like,
I'm like trying to stay tethered to my chair here.
I miss that. I miss being able to do that. You can do that in the UK and the US. You can't do it in Scandinavia. You must never interrupt.
But I have ADHD. I find it almost impossible not to interrupt people.
Yeah,
I usually only do it when I get excited.
This feels great. No one's offended. No one's offended.
This is one of the, again, I'm gonna come back on topic in a second, but one of the things that I absolutely love about this evolving HR community is the passion that you all have, and that, go back and watch that, because everybody suddenly started going like this. EQ,
it's the future.
Cool stuff, a bit of geekery. So, all right, I'm gonna drag it back to the topic at hand. Let's talk about metrics. Let's talk about outcomes. So, what are some of the ways that you think, Tiffany, that HR can measure its strategic value to the business? So what sort of, I guess metrics and outcomes is the word I'm looking for.
Yeah. And I think for me, a lot of times, people don't always like to hear it, but for me, like for us to be a good partner to the business, we have to look at, of course, we're going to look at our metrics around our people, our data in terms of like, are we hiring diverse folks? How many people are leaving? What are we having those conversations strategically as an HR team, even as a department of one, however we're structured in the organization, to make sure that we are bringing in folks and that looks the right way, so to speak. I think a lot of that is also, we look at qualitative data, but there's also quantitative. And I think sometimes the intangible is missed and understated, underestimated. So for me, one of the big ones, an outcome is, am I building relationships? We have to be able to have good relationships. And what do those relationships look like across? We can do things like pulse surveys. I'll never forget that. When I worked at a nonprofit, my manager was like, you're going to go and you're going to do a needs assessment. You're going to go get some feedback from your stakeholders out in the business. And we're like, wait, are we sending this via survey? And they're like, no, you're going to go sit in front of them with all your questions and do a start, stop, continue of what should I start, stop, and continue. And to this day, this was like many years ago, that has been a practice I've kept. I want to know how I'm doing. I want to understand, are we meeting what the business needs? We have to have also metrics that are tied to the business and their outcomes, or they're not going to see our value. And so I think, in terms of, are people able to have different types of conversations? When we look at performance, people are doing that really poorly, very inconsistently. And if we can have an impact on that, but for me, it's, what are the things that you feel like are a gap in the business? It's the listening. And if we're getting more trust, if I'm invited to more meetings, that to me is exciting. If people are listening and they're starting to put in place the things that I'm recommending, or starting to ask me more questions, invite my opinion, so to speak, my perspectives to the table, that for me is one of the big ones. We can, look at all sorts of other metrics. And another one, I think when we look at succession planning, that's a huge area. Carol mentioned it earlier. That's a gap that people don't often look at. So if we can say, let's help you benchmark, where your talent is. Let's look at some of that data. Bringing that data forward to people is really important, but it's those little unseen things where we add value to that I don't want to get lost in the conversation.
Yeah, that's a good point. Rachel, what are your thoughts around outcomes and metrics?
I love that you've just mentioned succession planning. It's one of the most fun, rewarding pieces of work I'm doing for a client right now, a full talent review with succession planning at the heart. And that's such a good example, like you said, Tiffany, of where kind of quantitative meets qualitative, and it's about conversations. And also you mentioned stop, start, continue, which I've actually also just done a piece of work on employee opinion, what's it called? Engagement survey results using the stop, start, continue methodology for how we work with it going forward. Ref, building trust, communicating, seeing the impact of the changes we want in the business. But I really like the fact you'd use that as a fact-finding mission and a relationship building tool. So I just scribbled it down actually, because I think that's a really nice way to use that in a different context. I think you also mentioned the obvious stats that we'll always need. We always need that good quality HR dashboard with the metrics on retention, attrition scores, who's leaving and why. I'm a bit skeptical about engagement scores, I have to say. I mentioned the stop, start, continue with the employee feedback, annual feedback survey on engagement. I think they've had their day. I think maybe don't throw them out of the window because they give you a historical picture. And if you're a small I think they have their place. But I just, we need a much better employee listening strategy that is, regular, agile, gets more feedback, perhaps on particular topics. I love those machines that you have at the airports, where you can hit the happy face, the kind of medium happy face and the sad face as you go through passport control. Did you have a good experience at a passport control or at baggage handling? I would love for us to implement those in our workplaces. What have we done to you during the day, for those that are in an office building? Maybe when you go in and maybe when you leave out, when you leave on your way out.
Yeah.
Maybe even after meetings, what did that meeting? Did it give you anything or did it take something away?
Yeah.
There are different ways to measure engagement and I think get input. So I'd like to see more of those metrics coming in. There's still plenty of companies that are counting training hours. And I'm just always asking, what was the impact of that training? What was the learning it brought? Are you doing skills gaps and capability mapping analysis? And then what are you doing to close those gaps and help people learn and grow in the direction that they've chosen and the business needs them to do? Mm-hmm. So there's more, I think, sophisticated data that we need. And so I'm super excited about what AI can do there and what it can, help us with. And again, that I think helps us to articulate our value and use ourselves in a better way because we're, you mentioned empowered earlier, Tiffany, as well. We're empowered and enabled with just better data that actually tells us something.
Yeah, absolutely. Any thoughts, Carol?
Yeah, so I'm actually going to pull us back to imagine you're at the beginning of the year and you're thinking your 1-3-5 year strategy and you're doing your workforce planning. If you're thinking metrics and outcomes and you want to figure out how HR can be the strategic partner, let's ask ourselves, and I'm seeing from the chat, a lot of people based on their industries are worried about absences or turnover. Mm-hmm. All those dashboard components are extremely important. Mm-hmm. But let's figure out what's the goal at the beginning of the year. We have to ask the questions first. Mm-hmm. Why am I measuring this? What am I measuring? How am I measuring? What are we going to do with the information every month that I get it? Mm-hmm. I feel too often one of the stigmas of we're highly administrative is we pump out reports and they're not used because the dashboard is coming prefabricated from whatever HRIS you have. And you're like, here's your turnover. Here's your time to fill. Here's your this. And there's no questions. I believe the next generation of HR, and I'm part of the next generation. That's all I got to say. The next generation of HR is there to ask insightful questions, never to give answers. My job is not to give you an answer. My job is to help you become greater aware about what it is that matters to you. Why does all of this matter? That's a question I ask all the time. Why does it matter? Why does the absence cost matter? How does that align to the OKRs? How does it align to the 1 and 3, 5 year strategy? When you finally get everybody to really agree to the why, now we can hold people accountable. Our role, if anything, is to ask questions because we're here to help you hold yourself accountable. So the metrics and the outcomes and the numbers are great, but think about the other stuff, the behind it.
Yeah, I think we have to add our analysis, overlay our analysis on top of that, right? You know, we have the dashboard, if we're lucky, right? That not everyone is in that position with a beautiful dashboard. Some people get it from multiple sources and multiple companies and also countries and sew it together in Excel, and it's old before you've used it. But I think if we, with our business acumen, overlay our analysis and, well, what is it telling us? What are the trends? How can we advise based off the back of this data? That speaks to our, domain, our people expertise in using the data in a good way, in a strategic way.
There's a big problem with data being, we have an excess of data in a lot of organizations and it isn't always useful. And it's funny, like, Carol, that was such a good question. And I think my kind of basic version of it has always been like, who cares? And I don't mean that in a rude way, but it's like, somebody coming and saying our turnover statistics are X, our turnover percentage X, Y, Z. Okay, why do we care about that? Who cares? Like, is it a problem? Like, the turnover might be great. Absence might be great. I mean, thing is, those are easy to calculate if you've got a good system, as Rachel said. If you're working on an Excel spreadsheet with a pen or a pen and paper, then perhaps not. Yeah, exactly. But it's like you've got to start at the end result that you're trying to achieve, which is what you just said. And then it's like, how will we know when we've got there? What does good look like and how do we measure it?
What does good look like? That is something that is, I ask all of my clients, hey, I need you to redo my performance review process. What does good look like? I can't give you a new rating scale until you can articulate meaningfully what does good look like.
So what's different when we're done?
Yeah, when you can do that, then I can help you associate behaviors to that. Then I can help you associate performance to those behaviors. So
it's funny. I get a lot of time when I'm talking to people about strategic HR, and again, massive misconceptions about what's strategic and what isn't. There are a lot of people out there that have an idea. And Lindsay, who's been in the chat, Lindsay's done my program, so she'll know what I'm about to say. A lot of people assume that certain types of activity are automatically strategic. And I'm like, no, you're missing something here. It is not a specific type of work that is strategic. It totally depends on what your organization is trying to achieve. The strategy is related to that and not the tasks. So it's that when we want to know what good looks like, then we can plan how we're going to get there. And, that's where the strategic piece comes in. And then trying to measure that it's doable, but one of the things that people come up with, the two that people say the most that they think are strategic: engagement surveys and implementing a new HRIS system.
Oh wow! Yeah,
they're the most common answers that I get, and I'm like, okay, do you have
interesting
in your organization? No, not really. Okay, then why do what are you trying to solve with your engagement survey? Is it strategic? Is it moving the company closer to where it was?
It's what you do with that, right? So I guess one of the programs I'm working on, it's actually what we're now doing with that output within the different departments and teams. That's absolutely strategic and value creating. I've seen it, felt it. And I think your point, Kirsty, is such a good one, because I feel like what we've been talking about today is largely very strategic in terms of, where we are moving the business, we are helping, enabling, empowering the business. But also as I think you've also highlighted, there's always going to be an operational element to strategic work too.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, there always will. And that's, you know, kind of by necessity, if you want it to be quality, you know, and secure a robust process, for example. So you kind of have to weigh them both up and kind of try and move into the right space, depending on what your business needs.
Absolutely. And on the flip side of that, work that we would traditionally think of as operational can absolutely be strategic if it is instrumental in helping the business achieve its goals.
Imagine your example of payroll. You know, imagine a company that doesn't have a payroll provider that's fit for purpose, and that there are errors and inconsistencies and mispayments. You know, that implementing a new payroll provider or system is absolutely a strategic piece of work and a big lift. Yeah. And you can probably forget all the nice, fun, you know, forward-looking work until you've got that fixed as well.
Absolutely, yeah. Got to get your house in order before you can do any of the extra
Foundations,
stuff.
so.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Carol, what are some of the kind of traps or pitfalls that HR need to avoid when they're trying to showcase impact, or sort of things that they slip into?
So some learned behaviors, and I think, again, it kind of goes to what we were just talking about. When are we looking at it from the right lens? Overloading leaders with information. The 5, 6, 7 paragraph email. Because we're passionate. We want to give you the information. We are diminishing our value when we do that, however, for the same reasons that we go into meetings and going, this should have been an email. There are many times that email should have been a meeting where you could actually dialogue, where you could open up Q&A in real time, where you could tell a story. That's another pitfall. HR terminology and jargon. Just because that makes sense to us doesn't mean it makes sense to them. So can you amend your vocabulary, expand your vocabulary to make it meaningful to your audience? I think, you know, besides, like I said, I think the next generation is going to have coaching principles as part of their acumen. There needs to be you need to learn copywriting. You need to learn some communication skills that are outside of, you know, your typical terminology. So I think those two off the top of my head are the ones that, while intention is to offer insights, offer support the strategy, too often it hinders our reputation because it's not absorbed and it's not easily applied. Many times I actually believe strongly in cascading communication. Start at the top, then do a Q&A, then adjust, then give the rest of the communication to that next layer to communicate in their words that their team knows. Give them the FAQs. It allows your message. One, it empowers the leaders, but two, it allows your message to be heard on a much more practical level. So that's one of the pitfalls. And I mean, we've all talked a little bit about the data for data's sake. Like, that's a major pitfall. And, you know, not being able to directly link all of the initiatives that are strategic for the company, that's a pitfall. If you are like, in my career, I really want to implement an HRIS so I can put that on my resume. Just take an extra 5 minutes and figure out how that is strategically important to that company, and don't just go down there like a dog with a bone and be like, we need new HRIS. We need new HRIS because it's a goal of mine. So those are some pitfalls that, again, I've just seen. I'm just going through my experiences, having had this business since 2000 and talking to probably over 10,000 HR people. It's like, honey, that's not important. Just not here. Unless you want to go into HRIS and like that's your new thing, Like, if your magic is motivating and training and development, who the frick cares if you want to do an HRIS? Come on, find your magic.
Love it. How about you, Rachel? What sort of pitfalls and things do you see?
I wanted to pick up on a point actually that was really resonated, Carol, from what Carol was saying in this email thing, and bombarding or overwhelming your leaders with information, whether it's verbally or whether it's in email. Find their why, find what they're trying to achieve. And as simple as, don't start your emails with, I need you to do this, or we would like, write from what would you like? How can I help you? What are you trying to achieve? And then you're angling your message to you when you're not I. And I think this is a really important tactic and angle to come from as a HR leader, a HR business partner, whatever your role is in HR. Think of the business that you're enabling and empowering. Back in the day when I was a business partner in one of the investment banks, we actually called ourselves RMs, relationship managers. We weren't called HR generalists or even HR VPs. And it was such a great way to, one, position ourselves in the organization with the leaders we supported, but two, really articulate that we were this pivotal, one face of HR, but we were this pivotal role, and we were there to build relationships with our businesses. It was a massive door opener, but it was a real, kind of crystallization for me around what my role actually was. And from that seat or that position, it's much easier if you need to perhaps enforce a policy or keep some things within the framework or the boundaries. It was much more accessible, much easier to deliver challenging messages, because you had that trust. You built the relationship. You had that trust.
Yeah.
So yeah,
so much of it comes down to
made about communication, and then I, sort of pivoted to relationships. But yeah,
but those are the two key things. It's communication and relationships. It really always is. It's amazing. Tiffany, anything you would add?
I think they mostly said it all, but it is the trust. Our stakeholders, whether it's employees, the board, our leaders, the community, whoever that is, they need to feel there's got to be an emotional piece to it, and trust, and expecting that trust back versus forcing ourselves to this proverbial table and making it all about us. And here's all the spreadsheets and reports. Is not healthy. If we're looking to win over hearts, it's not through data. It might be a piece of it, but we have to model those behaviors, that the ways that we intend to impact, and be consistent with that. So that's what I'd add, is there is an emotional intelligence, but also perspective.
Oh, that was well said. I love
that. Was very well said. I have a very, very simple rule that I say, and it's like, stop talking about HR. No one cares apart from you. No one has studied it apart from you. Stop with the HR speak their language, and that kind of covers what you said a bit, Carol, but in, I like to keep things very, very simple. So I'm very conscious of time. We've only got a couple of minutes. If I was to ask each of you, and I'll start with you, Rachel, what would be the one important piece of advice that you would give to someone in HR looking to articulate the value of HR within their organization?
Meet people where they are. Find out. It's relationships and trust. If you don't have that and you haven't found out what they're trying to achieve, how can you create those results through people?
Brilliant. Yeah. Tiffany?
I'd say be a leader. Don't forget that you are a leader. We are not a transactional piece on a chessboard. So not being afraid to give that dissenting opinion. The people pleaser is out the door. We have a responsibility to help them show up to the way that they're looking to. That can showcase our value. And really, we can be true business partners from that perspective.
Wonderful. Carol?
I would say remain curious and open. and your value as an HR leader changes. And so don't get stuck in what let's say you achieve great value and you're recognized for the great value. Thank you. Now what's the next thing? Stay curious. Don't become complacent. And in staying curious, continue to be asking questions. Ask questions. Explore, explore, explore. When you can start to read the room before the room even opens their mouth, your value is already present. So, yeah, stay curious.
Great note to end on. Honestly, ladies, there is so much knowledge and wisdom and experience in the room right now. That has been a really enjoyable conversation. I always feel with these, I could probably do 3 hours and we would not run out of things to say. I really don't. But I hope that everybody who's joined us today and who watches the replay has found that useful. Please follow these 3 ladies on LinkedIn. If you're not connected to them already, then do connect with them. They have huge amount of wisdom to impart. So thank you, ladies. That was really lovely. And yeah, very, very grateful to you for giving up your time for me. And I hope that you enjoyed it. I love
that. I love listening to the 3 of you. I really did. Thank you so much.
This is highlight. Thanks everybody for joining.
Yes.
And Christy for having me.
Thank you. We'll be back on the 21st of November with our next one, which is going to be how to choose a coach for yourself, which will be quite interesting as well. So thank you very much. Hope you all have a lovely evening.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.